Okay. All right, so I'm Ms. Henderson. This is biology. Who knows what the word biology means? Anybody know? The study of life. That's right. Okay, so yes, bio is life, ology is the study of, biology is the study of life. And because God is the author and creator of life, for me, studying biology just really makes me kind of more in awe of God. This might sound crazy to you guys, but just studying biology, especially the cell, just kind of makes me worship God. And it just really gets me excited, and I just, through studying biology, I just think there's just no way. I don't know how people can't believe in God. There's no other way. So we're going to have a great year this year. We do not have the perfect classroom setting. Sometimes it's hot in here, sometimes it's cold. You can bring blankets, you can bring coats, you can bring water bottles. I know in the video it was talking about with the labs, not to have food or drinks, but we definitely will have exceptions because I know that you need cold water in here a lot of times. Dress with layers because you will get hot. Sometimes I have the fans on and sometimes we just can't, just because of the sound. But today is not going to be the most fun day, because I'm going to talk the whole time. I'm sorry. Normally we will talk for like a good 40 to 45 minutes, and then there's like some kind of activity or lab, so it kind of breaks it up. But today I am going to talk. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I want to hear a little bit about you guys because we really get to know each other a lot throughout the year. And we're going to talk about the class, the syllabus, taking the class honors. I'm going to answer your questions, and then we're going to go right into the first few days of material. And the way I really like to do class, I like to talk back and forth. I don't want to just be up here standing and talking to you. So at certain points, we're really going to talk back and forth to each other. You can just always, raise your hand. You don't have to raise it like that, but just like so I know that you want me to call on you, that would be great. But I was a biology major in college, graduated from Furman, went and got my master's degree in nutrition and became a registered dietitian. I worked at a hospital in Charlotte for a few years, and then I worked at a hospital in the upstate. And then when I had children, I stopped working, but I saw patients with eating disorders out of a psychologist's office for several years. And then God called me to homeschool just one of my kids. I have 2 kids. But I homeschooled my daughter from 7th through 10th grade. And so I actually taught her this class. When I taught her this class, I did use a different curriculum. I used the Bob Jones curriculum, and it was great for her because I taught her every single day. This is the best curriculum for you guys because you're having to do it at home. But you'll see that sometimes I bring in pages from Bob Jones, or I do some of the labs from Bob Jones. So even though we're mostly doing Apologia, I do bring in some outside stuff, and sometimes I bring stuff in from the outside that's not from Bob Jones. So I have 2 kids. I have my daughter that I homeschooled is graduated from Wofford, and she's starting law school in a few weeks. And my son is going to be a junior at the University of South Carolina, and he is in the business school. Other things about me, I have 3 dogs, and I am totally crazy about my dogs. I will probably talk about my dogs during the class. I also teach English as a second language through a program at my church, which is one of my passions, besides teaching biology. And really, I'm here because I love biology, and I feel like this is what God wants me to do. And I really enjoy it, and I enjoy teaching students and watching them grow as students and learning how to study and really take a high school class. So our class is a lot of information, it's a lot of memorization. It might be, for some people, the hardest class that they've done so far, but it will get better, and I will work with you, and it will get better, and it's really a class where if you never use biology again in your life, I feel like it's a class that teaches you how to study and how to take tests, so I think it will be beneficial for everybody, even if you're not interested in biology. Okay, so what I'd like for everyone to do is, we'll start with Nancy, is that okay? And I want you to tell everybody your name, because we've got some new people, okay? What grade you're in. I want you to tell us what science you took last year. Something that you like to do. Something that you enjoy, you like to do. It might be a sport, it might be some kind of art, it might be that you love spending time with your dogs, whatever. So just tell us one thing that you like to do. And then, if there's something that you're looking forward to either learning about or doing in biology this year, you can tell us that. If you have nothing, that's okay. I think last time I taught this class, I had some people that told me that they were just absolutely dreading dissections, and you can tell me that too, because that helps me just to kind of know where you are with biology. Okay, ready, Nancy?
Yes.
Okay.
My name's Nancy. I'm going into I'm in ninth grade, I guess. And then I did physical science last year,
Okay.
and I enjoy swimming competitively, and I guess dissections. I think that'll be fun.
Okay, good. Okay.
I'm Anna Grace. I did general science last year. I enjoyed doing theater, and I'm excited about the fungi because I love mushrooms.
Oh, wow. Oh, cool. Okay.
My name is Essie. I'm in 10th grade. I did chemistry last year, and I'm a little excited for the dissections.
Oh,
I think
good.
it'll be fun.
Good. And what do you like to do?
I like to color.
Color. Okay. Well, that will help you in your lab notebook. Okay.
I'm Hannah, and I don't know what science I took last year.
Uh-huh.
I'm in ninth grade, and I'm excited for the dissections.
Good.
And I like to play volleyball for fun.
Okay. And you play on some kind of a
Yes.
homeschool team? What team do you play?
CHC.
CHC.
And then I also play for another team, Stars, too. So.
Okay, good. So you're like all year,
Yes.
serious volleyball player.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm Ruby, and last year I took physical science, and then I also play volleyball for CHC,
Okay.
and I'm not excited for dissecting.
Okay. Well, thank you for telling me. All right.
I'm Eli. I'm in 10th grade. I took chemistry last year.
Uh-huh.
I like illustration, drawing, and I also am looking forward to dissection,
Okay.
which will be fun.
Well, good. Well, good. Okay, let me get this set back up for Anna. Okay, great. All right, so let's go ahead. One thing I did want to tell you guys, the ones, Essie and Eli, who had chemistry last year, that's kind of unusual to have chemistry before biology, but the last time I taught, I had 2 students that had that also. And I'm proud of you because that's hard to take chemistry in that early grade, so that's great that you got it done. It will help you a little bit. There's going to be some things that will be harder for the people who haven't had chemistry. I mean, this class is definitely designed where you take chemistry after, but you are at a little bit of an advantage on a few things, especially in the first semester, so that's great. Okay, so let's everybody get their syllabus out. Does everybody have their syllabus with them? Okay, it's okay if you don't have it. Did you read it?
My mom didn't tell me about it, so.
Okay, did you read the assignments for the week? Okay, so that was on, make sure you look because that was on the assignment, but yes, so you definitely, if you can today, Ruby, print out that syllabus and make sure that you have it and you keep it in your notebook. Okay, all right, so, with the syllabus, one of the first things it's going to tell you about, well, first of all, my phone number is on that syllabus, okay? And we do need to always try to communicate through Jupiter, but I'm just gonna be completely honest with you. Occasionally I miss, like I don't see, I really need a Jupiter app on my phone that would help me, but you can't, there's not really an app. And so occasionally I'll miss the email and I don't see it, and it could be like 1 or 2 days. And so if there's a question that you really need answered, you are welcome to text me and say, hey, Ms. Henderson, I left you a message on Jupiter, just want to make sure you saw it. So please don't, it will not bother me if you send me a text. So that is my cell number. Okay, so does everybody have the right textbook? This is not the newest Apologia textbook. It is the second, yes, it all looks right. Okay. How did reading the textbook go so far? Okay. It went okay? Okay. Was that a so-so, Eli?
It was like last year.
It was like that. Okay. So who's done Apologia Science before? You've read it and done it on your own? You've done it, Ruby? Okay. Okay, everybody. Anna, you haven't?
I did a back home.
You did it back
That
up.
was horrible.
Okay. This was better?
Last 1 year for my health class, Rebecca said that when you're 2 years old, you're half the height of what you're gonna be when you're fully grown. I have some friends who are really tall. That's not
That's
how
not,
it works.
that's not how it works. Okay. Well, so this is our textbook. There are things that I like about the textbook, and there's things that I don't like about the textbook, and I'll talk about it throughout the year. There's things where it's kind of lacking, there's things where it's really good, but I still overall feel like it is the best textbook for us, for our class. One of the things I don't love about it is I really like a lot of pictures and figures, charts, and things like that in science books. It has some, it could use more. Like, I'm not used to seeing pages that look like that in a science book. I like stuff mixed in. But the one thing I want to tell you is, and you saw that I noted this on your assignment sheet, like I said, read figure whatever it was, 1.2 very carefully, okay? I just did that because it was the first week of class. Because when I was in school, I would tend to see a little diagram or a figure and I just didn't look at it. I was just reading the book and ignoring that. Well, in science books, those figures, charts, and diagrams are really, you typically contain more information even than the text. And so they are very important. Always, always, always read the pictures, the charts, the diagrams, go through several times carefully, look at them and think about them. So I will not note that on the homework again, but that's what I'm suggesting to everyone. Okay, so then this is the other thing, and you don't need to have this with you, but everybody needs to have this at their house. The moms or if your dad does, whoever does or is over your homeschooling in your house, this is something that you need. Mostly because when we do the chapter, the study guides at the end of the chapter, okay, which is something we do with each module, we do a study guide. The moms are supposed to check your work with this book and then give it back to you to make corrections, and you will be turning those in. So you do need this. Occasionally there's answers for other things in here too. So this is something that everyone needs in their house. Okay. I like binders for this class because we have a lot of extra handouts and things that we punch holes in. It lets you keep your tests, your notes, all the sheets. It lets you keep everything together. You're welcome to, if you yours is not going to be this thick. Don't be scared. I promise it's not going to be this much. But you're welcome if you have a thick binder and you want to share it with another class and put some kind of divider in the middle and keep the biology on one side and the other class on the other so you don't have to carry as many things. That's fine too, but that tends to work the best, okay? All right, composition notebook with pages sewn in. So that's the lab notebook Essie can I see this? So this is, and you will need to bring this to class next week if you don't have this yet. But this is what this looks like, okay? All right, so that's what we're gonna use for the lab notebook. So everybody needs one of those. And then the dissection kit, you don't need until after Christmas. Most of the labs that we are gonna do the first semester are microscope labs. But then we really get into the dissections after Christmas, so if you don't have the kit now, that's no big deal. I have ruler and colored pencils on here. It doesn't need to be like a big ruler, we just really need a straight edge because sometimes we have to make little charts or draw things in your lab notebook. It's really mostly so you just have a straight edge. And the ruler and the colored pencils should be in your backpack. Quizlet, has everybody set up a Quizlet account? Has everybody joined my class or on Quizlet? Did everybody use that link to join my class? You did it? Anybody, did you do it?
I have an account, but I haven't
Okay, make sure you join my class. What about, make sure you join my class. Your sister never joined my class till the end and she had trouble getting to my sets. So it took me till the spring to figure out what was going on with her.
I think I got it.
Okay, you got it, okay. That's why I put the link, because in honor of Ellery, I put the link on the homework sheet this time. Okay, so Quizlet is really important in my class, and because we're not in class every day, where you're taking notes every day and you have notes to study. So Quizlet is kind of like your notes that I have written out for you. And you can make tests with it, you can use it as cards, you can play, there's different like kind of games. Who has done Quizlet before? My class.
I think not in this class. I did in like 3rd grade once.
Okay, well, so I have Quizlets for every module that we study. There's 16 modules that we're gonna study, except one that we don't do Quizlets for, that we kind of do a little bit differently. And typically I break them, so module 1 has 4 Quizlet sets. I try to break them down so that they're not too big. But, and I did on the homework for this week and next week, I would put study your Quizlet, but I'm not gonna really do that after module 1. That's just something you always need to be doing because it's gonna reinforce. Now, Anna Bentley told me that she learns better writing stuff, that she doesn't love Quizlet, that she learns better writing stuff. That's fine. That I always learn. I would write everything down in high school, and that helped me to learn too. And so if that's better for you, you look at those Quizlets and you write down what I've written. I wrote the Quizlets. We only use the Quizlets that I wrote. There's a lot of Apologia Quizlets on there. Some are good and some are not great. But when I make my tests, I use the Quizlets. So there's rarely anything ever on any of my tests that's not in Quizlet. And if there's gonna be something that's not in Quizlet, I'm gonna tell you about it before the test. Like, be sure to study this, it's not in Quizlet, but it's on the test. So Quizlet is your friend. It is, let me know if you have any trouble using it, but my suggestion is just do some Quizlet every day. And if you're somebody that has a phone or a tablet, when you're riding in the car, you're on the way to co-op, on the way to volleyball, pull it out and just, pick one review set and just study. The more often you're doing it and the more spread out you're doing it, the better it's gonna be for your brain to absorb it than just trying to do it all right before the test. Does that make sense? Okay, YouTube. Did you guys like the videos? Okay, so I do a lot of videos. Some of them are silly, some of them are serious, because I can't be here teaching you everything all the time. We have a limited amount of time. So that's kind of another way to get some teaching. A lot of times when it's something that's harder or more challenging, I'm gonna try to find a YouTube video about it, just to give you, you're gonna then read it in a book, you're gonna answer a question about it, you're gonna watch a video about it, I'm gonna talk about it, you're gonna study it on Quizlet, and then you're gonna answer questions about the study guide, in the study guide about it, and that all those points of exposure are gonna help solidify it in your brain and help prepare you for the test and help you to learn it and know it. So that is the point of the YouTube. Okay, any questions about any of the materials, any issues? So when you go to Quizlet, you will always go to my modules, my study sets. So it should always say Amy Henderson beside it, and I think right now, there's like a pink flamingo picture by mine. I don't know how that got on there, I didn't pick it, but I like it. So, when you go to my page, I think you have to scroll all the way down because I have the latest ones that I did, which were like module 15 and 16. So you have to go down to module 1, there's 4 study sets, for module 1. Okay, so the expectations for class and how I grade. So I really expect when you come, because we only come one time a week, that you come and you're ready to go. Okay, so you just like come in here, you can come in here a few minutes early, get your book out, get your binder out, get out what you're gonna need, and that you've done the reading, you've answered the questions, you've watched the videos, and you're ready to participate, answer questions, that you're enthusiastic. Does that mean that you have to know and understand everything you read? No, it doesn't mean that, but it means there's something you're confused about, you're here ready to ask questions. You know that, oh, I didn't really understand how DNA is formed. That was really hard for me. You can tell me that at the beginning of class. If there's something that's hard that you don't understand, that's probably going to be one of the things I'm going to choose to spend time on. But you come in here and you're ready and you're enthusiastic, and you participate. So you will see that 10% of the grade is participation. Okay, does that scare anybody? Does that, some people, my daughter would be one that wouldn't talk at all in class. So it does mean that you have to talk to me. I like to talk. I like to have a dialogue. I like to go back and forth and talk the whole time. And so to do that, you have to be prepared. And so part of the reason I do that participation is because then I know that you're doing the work at home and that you're coming and that you're ready to go, okay? So that participation grade, I do 1 grade for first semester and 1 grade for second semester. If you have a bad week where you don't participate and you're behind and you're not prepared for class, that's fine. Everybody has a bad week. Everybody has off weeks. That is fine. I'm just going to kind of watch you over the whole semester. If I have concerns about your participation, I will talk to you during the semester and kind of let you know, like, you need to kind of work on this and this and this. And then there's a grade for next semester. And so the grade is somewhat subjective. It's not like, it's somewhat kind of me thinking, okay, how did this person do over the whole semester? But I will talk to you and kind of explain how I came up with that grade. But that is going to be 10% of your grade. Okay, 50% of the grade, tests. That might be a higher percentage than what you've ever had in a class before, because to me, how I know that you're learning and studying is really from the tests. Okay, I would have actually probably done it 60%, but Miss Millie wouldn't let me. She said 50% was the max. So, but anyway, one thing I will tell you, a lot of kids in here really learn how to study and learn to take tests. And so the first semester, the test grades might not be as good, and it kind of takes a little while to learn how to take my test and figure it out. Quizlet is your friend, so remember that. And I do allow people to do corrections for the test. If you take the class CP, College Prep, then you can earn back half of your points for anything that you get wrong if you turn in corrections for everything but true, false. And if you take it for honors, you can earn back 1/3 of your points. So that kind of does help. So the testing is going to be done at home. Okay, I email the parents the day that the test is on the schedule, and then they are to administer that test at home with no books, no notebooks, give you a certain amount of time, and then they're going to seal the test up in an envelope, and it comes back the next time that we have class. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. The other part of the grade is the lab notebook, which is 20%, and we'll talk a lot more about the lab notebook next week, but it is 20% of your grade, and that is how you are in labs, how you participate in labs in your lab notebook. And then the other 20% is a homework grade. And really, every single person should have a 100 homework grade. This is kind of like the give me grade. For homework, the homework that I take up is always the study guide at the back of the chapter. That's the thing that I told you your mom would, or your parent would be checking in the notebook. You make the corrections and you turn those in with your tests. So that is really the only homework that you turn into me. I don't have time to look at everything and grade everything. So all the on your owns and the other things where I ask you to do definitions or questions, those need to be in your notebook. I'm going to talk about those during class. I kind of judge if you've done it and know what you're talking about during the participation, but I just don't have time to check everything. Now, your mother may choose to check it, and that's great, but I will know. I mean, I will be able to tell if you're not doing it, and really all those things are designed to help you learn it and help you prepare for the test, so it's to your benefit to be doing all that. Now, the exception is sometimes there's like a little extra honors question or an honors thing, and I do look at those or take those up. So that is how I'm going to grade. Those are my expectations. Does anybody have a question about the syllabus? Everybody good? Okay. All right. Honors. Who is thinking about taking it honors? Okay. All right. Okay. So I'm going to go through this real quick about taking it honors. I feel like you and your mom knows what's involved, so I'm not. I feel like I feel good with that. This is what I want to say about honors, and really all the information is on here, like what the extra assignments are and the extra expectations and this information. But I need to know if you might take it honors by the first test, because the honors test is a little bit different than the CP test, okay? So you need to go ahead, and you think you might want to take it honors in that first test, which is in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, you'll take it honors. If you decide a few weeks into the school year that no, I don't think I want to take the class for honors, it's too much, I can always regrade the test and change you back to CP. But after the first test, you cannot move up to honors. So if you might want to take it honors, you go ahead and say, I think I'm going to take it honors, and we'll take the honors test. And if anybody else has any questions about honors, feel free to talk to me about it after class. I won't take up any more time with that. Okay, so the other thing I want to tell you about your book, let's go ahead and open up to the first page. It is hot in here, guys, I'm so sorry. That I want to say about the text is that, does anybody write in their books? Any
Oh,
like write in your text?
no.
Okay. I am all about writing in your textbooks. Okay. I think it's a great thing. Now, you need to get approval from your mom, because if you have younger siblings that are going to be using the textbook, they may not be okay with that. Or if they're determined to sell the textbook. This one's probably not going to be one that they're going to sell because it's the old edition. But I think when you're reading, you get the highlighter pen and you highlight important things, you make notes. I like it even during class, because we kind of go through the book together when we're bantering back and forth, doing our discussion. People write stuff in the book. And this is the other thing I'm going to tell you. With the on your own questions, you can write those on a piece of paper and keep those in your binder. Or, especially if it's a short answer question that doesn't really take much paper, you can write it in your book, as far as I'm concerned. So I usually write them in my book, because I go through and answer them too, and just make sure that I know what I'm doing here. So I'm all about it. I don't want to make any moms mad. but I think it's very helpful because to me, if I was studying for the test, I would be studying my textbook and my Quizlet, and just to have little notes and things, or if there was something that I really emphasized in a chart, you sat there and highlighted it during class and put a star, like, make sure I study this for the test. If that helps you, you write in the book. Okay. All right, so let's talk first about the lab safety, okay? Which I'm not, there's nothing about lab safety on the first test, okay? But I want you to know about lab safety so that we can have good habits in here when we're doing the labs. And so the videos were kind of silly, but they had some pretty much covered everything I wanted you to know about lab.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's good. It's a good reminder for me. Okay, so who can tell me, maybe each person could tell me something, one thing that rule that they need to follow for being safe during lab. Can everybody think of maybe like one thing that they picked up from, is this gonna stop?
It really, it was like right before it too.
Okay, do I need to do something?
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see why. So who has something for me? Anybody have something for me that they learned that a rule or something that we need to do in the lab? Nancy?
Don't cut towards yourself, like towards your fingers.
Yes, and that is definitely one that, some of those rules were more chemistry oriented rules, but that is definitely one that will apply to this class because we will be doing the cutting with the dissections. Essie?
Have eye protection.
Eye protection, okay. So eye protection in here is not that much of an issue. There may be something in the spring where we might do the eye protection. That is more of a chemistry thing, but it's definitely a lab rule. So that is great. Yes.
Eat food.
Yes, definitely not eating food. And in here, with chemistry, that's obviously really serious. And here it's also serious because even when we're doing the microscope, we don't want to get food particles on the microscope. Obviously, you know that it would be serious if you were eating with a dissection. That would not be a good idea. But I don't think anybody would want to do that. But we don't want to get any kind of food on the microscope or the slides. So yes, but I do know that everybody's going to need to have water bottles in here. Usually when we do the labs, we actually, a lot of times, we'll do them in there or at a different table. We leave, this is kind of the lecture part of the class, and we're at different tables. And so you can just have your water at your table and come back and forth to it. Okay, what else? Anybody have any more for me?
The weight thing, like.
Yes,
I
yes.
don't know if that's a big thing in biology.
Well, there's a few things that we do smell. And so yes, so you don't want to, especially if it's some kind of strong chemical, you don't want to stick your face in it. You might burn out some nasal hairs in there, but you want to just gently walk the smell. Okay?
Like help clean up and don't leave stuff out.
Help clean up and don't leave stuff out. Now, that's going to be one exception in this class because I need to use every second of class, and a lot of times our labs feel so rushed because I want to teach you the hard concepts and I don't want to cut that out. And so the labs are rushed, so I usually have the labs set up, you go to the lab, and then I might even teach some more. So a lot of times I do the cleanup after class. That is not normal. That is not the way you would do it in a normal classroom setting. It's not the way you'll do it in college. You'll always clean up. But in here, for time purposes, that is what's happening a lot of times. Sometimes we do finish early and we'll clean up those days. But I like to tell everybody that that's, we have things here because we're in a church building that aren't normal. Our lab is missing some things that you're going to see when you go to college in a lab, or if you were in a school in a lab. So I do like to talk about those things. Any other things anybody can think of? Hannah?
If you're like messing with chemicals or dissection, don't rub your eyes after. Wash your hands before.
Yes. So eyes, even face. I am I'm a face toucher. My makeup's always completely off by the end of the day because I'm, touching my face all the time. So yes, so that's like, I have to think about that. You don't want to be touching anything. And sometimes we use gloves, but most of the time in here, we are not using gloves. What about shoes? Closed-toe shoes. And that is important in our class because even if we're just doing a microscope lab, if you dropped a slide onto your foot, you can easily cut, that glass can cut into your foot. So I do want to make sure that you're wearing closed-toe shoes. Anybody else think of anything from the videos? Anything else? Okay, I'm going to call out a few that I didn't hear. No horseplay, move your backpacks out of the way. Sometimes somebody mentioned the glasses, but more often in here, we may be using gloves. You may wear gloves, so that's going to be your personal protective gear. Don't touch your face or your eyes. Report any kind of spill or accident. Wash your hands, and you can wash your hands. We can walk around to the kitchen and wash our hands, okay? Another thing that they talked about was when you're disposing of chemicals or things in the labs, they talked about in the video about how you always want to ask your teacher how they're supposed to be disposed of. And here with the dissections, and sometimes we have stuff that has to be disposed of, and you do want to get disposal instructions for that. I think the videos also said no cell phones, and actually I don't, with cell phones, a lot of times I actually do, if you have a cell phone or a tablet, like you to take pictures of things that we've done, so that you have it for when you're doing your lab write-up. It is helpful. If you don't have a phone or a tablet, I can take pictures of your stuff and email you the photos, but we do sometimes pull out phones and things during labs for that purpose. Other things that that labs would have that we don't have, the shower, the eye wash station. We'll use the kitchen sink if we need an eye wash station. I'm not anticipating that at all. We will have a first aid kit. And then the other thing I want you to know about that are in every lab is there's a notebook that's called the MSDS, and it has a sheet about the chemicals, about every single chemical that's in a lab and what to do if it spills, if it gets on your skin. It's required by the government that every lab have that. We don't have an MSDS. You can actually look up anything. There's now an MSDS online, and so you can look up anything that you need to know for the MSDS online that way. But I did want you to know what that is because you will probably see it in your lab when you're in college. Okay. Any questions about lab safety? We're going to be ready to go for lab next week. So next week for lab, bring that lab notebook, closed-toed shoes, colored pencils, phone or tablet. No, you're not going to need to take pictures next week. Don't worry about that. But definitely the closed-toed shoes. And the other thing with labs, if you have long hair, it does probably help to keep a ponytail holder in your backpack, because just even with using the microscope and stuff like that, and definitely with the dissections, you want to have your hair up and away. Okay? All right, so now we're going to go ahead and be on page 1 in your book, and this, you may take notes, you may write things in your book as I'm going through. Some people, because I do include kind of all the notes implicitly, they need to just listen to me. Okay, and I understand that. And so if there's something that I say you need to take notes on because it's maybe not implicit or it's something really important, I will tell you that. But I am kind of fine. I want you to learn kind of what works for you. Some people, when I was in high school, I was like Anna. I liked to write everything down because I really learned by writing. And so I would have never not taken notes, and it probably would have been on notebook paper. But I'm fine with whatever works for you. I do move quickly, and so that's why for some people it's probably going to be easier to kind of go through the book and even make notes in their book and maybe write a few things down, but sometimes it's too quick to write everything down since we're kind of on our limited time schedule. Okay, so is everybody doing okay? I know it's been a lot of sitting and it's really hot in here, y'all. Or is everybody hanging in there? Okay. All right, so we know that biology is the study of life, and our book starts out with 4 criteria to determine if something is alive. And every living thing has to have these 4 criteria, and we will talk about these 4 criteria so much all throughout the class. Does anybody remember what any of those criteria, anybody remember? And you can look in your book while I'm talking to you, but anybody want to share one of the criteria of the characteristics of life? Eli?
It must contain DNA.
Must contain DNA. What's DNA?
Deoxyribonucleic acid.
It is. And do we have DNA?
Yes.
Yes. So anybody have like a kind of like a basic definition? It doesn't have to be perfect, like what DNA is. It doesn't have to be something straight out the book, like what in their mind what DNA is. It's kind of like the instruction. Kind of contains all the instructions for building each cell in each organism. It has all the information on it. Okay, so it has to have DNA, and what else?
Has to reproduce.
It has to reproduce. Yes, it has to reproduce. Okay, Effie?
Sharing energy from their surroundings.
Yes, so we can't function without energy. We are using energy in the form of ATP all throughout the day. And so how do we get energy from our surroundings? Where do we get our energy?
The sun. Or food.
Yes. Well, we get some from the sun too, but yes. So I was looking for food. Okay. So that makes us, because we get our food from another source, does that make us a consumer? Yes, it makes us a consumer. Okay, so all living things have to have a way to get energy, okay, and then extract that energy to make it in a usable form so it has energy. But what is the opposite of a consumer?
Producer.
A producer, yes. Hannah, what is an example of a producer?
They like, ooh, I don't know.
Okay, it's okay.
I don't know how to explain.
Okay, what living thing would be a producer? Like just an example of a living
Plants.
a plant. Okay, so producers produce their food, where consumers have to get their food from an outside source. So producers get their energy, okay, from the sun, water, and some minerals. They are producing their food, and then which is in the form of starch, that's called photosynthesis, okay, which we'll talk about at length. They make their food, and then they can break that apart to extract the energy from it. Okay, all right, so we've got all forms of life have DNA, all forms of life reproduce, all forms of life have a way to get energy and to use that energy, and then what is our 4th criteria that we haven't said yet?
Sense changes.
And respond to those changes.
Yes, so sense changes and respond to the changes. So this in here, I'm sweating right now, okay? I am sensing that my environment is too hot, okay? And my body wants to cool it down. And so I've got some little beads of sweat forming on me, and that's a response to my environment being too hot, okay? So I think one of the terms in that section was receptors. So we have receptors all over our body, on the inside of our body, and it's constantly sending signals so that our body can respond to changes, okay? And that's inside and outside of our body. All right, back to the energy, okay? So we talked about producers and consumers. There are a few other terms that I want to go over with you with the energy. So we had the word metabolism, okay? And I'm sure everybody hears that word when people are really skinny. They say, oh, he has a really fast metabolism, okay? So metabolism, what it means is the sum total of all the reactions in our body that are breaking down energy or building. So the sum total, let me give you the exact definition, sum total of all processes or reactions which convert energy and use energy. So the big thing that you need to know about metabolism is it's the sum total, okay? But there are two types of reactions that fall under that word metabolism. And both of these types of reactions would be part of the sum total that is metabolism. So does anybody remember what those are? One has to do is kind of like photosynthesis, and one is kind of like what a consumer does with their food. Nancy?
One is anabolism.
Okay, so you would think that would be how you would pronounce it, but it's pronounced anabolism, okay? Anabolism, and what's the other one, Ezzy?
Catabolism.
Okay, and so you're gonna say, that one's gonna say catabolism. Okay, so anabolism, which one do you think photosynthesis falls under with the plant making its food? Anybody have any ideas which one it would fall under?
Catabolism?
No, Nancy, is that what you were gonna say?
No. Can't see.
It's okay, I'm not judging you. So it's gonna be anabolism, okay? So it is because a plant making its food is putting things together, it's building something. It's like us building muscle. And the way that you can know this is, have you guys heard about weightlifters taking anabolic, that's what this word comes from, anabolic steroids, okay? They take those steroids to help build their muscles up. I do not recommend that. It's not good for you, but that's a good way to learn this word. So anabolism is about building things, building muscle, building bone, a plant making starch to store energy, okay? So it's building something, okay? It takes energy to build. So this one's going to take energy. And then catabolism is the opposite, and it is about breaking something down to get energy out of it. So this is what the consumers are doing. You ate lunch, and your body is going to convert that food, break it down into a usable form of energy. So that's going to be catabolism. So that's going to break down and make energy. Okay. All right. Any questions about that? Did that help you understand that a little bit better? Okay. All right. Now, in addition to producers and consumers, what was the other group? Now you know, I'm going to ask you because you like mushrooms, so you tell me. decomposers, that's right. And what do decomposers do for their energy?
They take dead things and then they decompose them to get energy.
Yes. So they are sort of like a consumer because they're not producing anything, but they are feeding off of dead animals, plants, debris, and breaking them down for their energy. So that's the decomposers. Those are going to be bacteria, they're going to be fungi, they're going to be all kinds of cool stuff that we'll look at under the microscope and talk about soon. Okay, so back to consumers, okay. The book talked about a couple different kinds of consumers. Anybody remember the 3 kinds of consumers? Are kind of grouped depending on what they eat. Nancy?
Herbivores, carnivores, omnivores.
Yes, so herbivores are just going to eat the plant materials. Carnivores are going to eat animals and other living things other than plants, okay? And then omnivores are going to eat both. All right, but because carnivores are eating other animals that maybe were herbivores, okay, they're getting a lot of the same substances. So I really like the figure 1-2 because it shows you how all the different groups still depend on each other and how the energy gets cycled through all the groups. So you've got that energy from the sun, okay, is helping that producer, that tree, to grow and to do photosynthesis and make its own food, okay? And then I'm going to go to the left, and you see the giraffe, okay? So the giraffe is then, giraffes are herbivores, so the giraffe is eating the plant. So obviously the giraffe is also dependent on the sun because it needs to get its food. And then that giraffe dies, and we've got a predator, well, I don't know if the giraffe died on its own, or did this lioness kill the giraffe? What do you think? What do y'all think? I don't know, maybe the lioness, I guess I didn't really think a lioness could kill a giraffe, but that might be what happened here. Okay, so then the giraffe is not getting eaten by decomposers because the giraffe is getting eaten by the lioness, but the lioness then is going to die, and decomposers like bacteria and fungi are going to feed off the lioness, and then they are going to release energy and substances into the soil and into the air, which the plant, that tree, is going to use to do photosynthesis to make its own food so that it can grow. Okay, so it's all that energy is getting recycled, all those nutrients are getting recycled. It's all working together. Okay, let's see. All right, so with the reproduction, okay, the book talks about 2 types of reproduction. Asexual reproduction, that just means that there's not 2 parents, okay? And so with asexual reproduction, you have 1 parent. Is the offspring's DNA going to be the same or different?
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same, okay? It's going to be exactly the same. It's a copy of the parent, and we're going to learn about all different kinds of asexual reproduction throughout the class. And then with sexual reproduction, you're going to have 2 parents, okay? And the DNA is going to be, the offspring is going to be a combination of those 2 parents. The one exception, the term that the book went ahead and gave you, which we'll talk much more at length about in our genetics chapter, which is one of my favorite chapters, is the term mutation. Does anybody remember what a mutation is, or have any kind of, and that might be something that you had heard of before my class. Nancy?
Do you just want like the definition of it?
Sure, sometimes you can read it right out of the book.
It's just basically like the DNA of the child or whatever it is completely different. Like doesn't have anything similar to the DNA of you, like to that of its parents.
Okay, not quite, okay, so it's still going to be, there's going to be something about the DNA that is different. There was something that an error that occurred at some point.
Maybe we have two different colored eyes. That would be mutation, wouldn't it? If you have like.
It could be, it could be a mutation, but there's definitely different diseases and genetic disorders that are mutations, and I just want you to know right now that a mutation is, in this definition's on Quizlet, the definition I want you to know is like an abrupt change in something with the DNA. But that doesn't mean, Nancy, that offspring's DNA is completely different. It just has one little code section that is different, but it could really affect the offspring, okay? All right, so that is, and we're not gonna, mutation is something we're gonna learn a lot more about when we do the genetics chapter, but that definition, I do want you to know that definition for mutation. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the scientific method, which sometimes I think is, okay, here we go. Sometimes I think can be a little bit confusing. And so I hope the video talking about the gummy bears with the water, I hope that helped. I'm going to give you another example. But the scientific method, scientists need to have some kind of standard framework to do research and to do experiments with. It's kind of like the scientific method is the way that science can be consistent from country to country through all kinds of studies. It's kind of like rules for doing science. And science isn't perfect. People aren't perfect. We can't get all our answers from science. It's constantly changing. People think that they've got it figured out. They make a theory that's been around for years and years and years, and then that theory can get disproven. So we always know that it's changing, that only God knows everything, that we can't put our complete trust and faith in science. Because and we learn when we study these scientists with the spontaneous generation that they thought for sure that spontaneous generation, they thought it for hundreds of years was true until it was disproven. So science are always changing and it is fallible. Okay, so this is how I'm going to kind of teach you a little bit about the scientific method. I'm going to tell you about a science experiment that my daughter did when she was in middle school. And I'm going to kind of walk you through her experiment. And when I actually test about the scientific method on the test, I actually have like a sample experiment and we talk about, and there's questions like, what was the hypothesis? What was the experimental group? What was the control group? So I think it kind of helps to have an example. And so my daughter knew that tomato plants are acid-loving plants. She knew that from doing some research on tomato plants because we were growing tomatoes at home. They're acid-loving plants, and I was buying this Miracle-Gro acid-loving plant fertilizer. So she knew that. She made that observation. She did some research. She read about how tomato plants are acid-loving plants. Okay? And so she also knew that coffee grounds, okay, the stuff that comes out of the coffee maker, are acidic, that coffee is acidic. And she had seen when she was at Starbucks that they throw away bags and bags of coffee grounds every day, okay? And so she thought, instead of buying the Miracle-Gro fertilizer, could you mix coffee grounds in the soil of the tomato plants, and would that improve the quality of the tomato plants? So her hypothesis was that adding coffee grounds to tomato plants would increase the quality and the quantity of the tomatoes produced. Does that make sense? So she made observations about the coffee. She knew about my fertilizer. She did some research, and she came up with this hypothesis. And so with her experiment, she started out with little seeds in cups, and she grew 24 plants, so 24 tomato seedlings. She got them to a certain height, and then she had 12 pots that were red, 12 pots that were blue, okay? And she planted the seedlings in the red pots with 6 cups of potting soil. She planted the seedlings in the blue pots with 5 cups of potting soil and 1 cup of coffee grounds mixed into the soil, okay? So, she had 2 groups. Which group was the control group and which group was the experimental group?
Wait, so the red ones were the.
Red ones, did I say red ones were the no coffee? Is that right? Okay, red ones were no coffee and blue were coffee.
Okay, the red ones would have been the control, and the blue ones were the experimental.
Yes, and so the independent variable, does anybody, this is what I find a little confusing. Anybody know what the independent variable would be? Ruby?
Can you change?
It's the thing you change, so what would it be in this experiment?
The soil.
So yeah, so adding the coffee grounds. So the coffee grounds added would be the independent variable, okay? So yes, the soil is different in the 2 different groups, okay? And then the dependent variable, the thing she was gonna measure, okay? She was gonna measure it, look at 2 things. One is qualitative, that's something you would describe with words, okay? And one is quantitative, something that there was gonna be a mathematical measure for. So the qualitative, she was going to describe the redness of the tomatoes, okay? The quantitative, she was going to count the number of tomatoes on each plant. Okay, so she had 2, so that's going to be that measurement, those measurements, the qualitative and the quantitative data are going to be the dependent variable because they're going to depend on what the soil was like for the plant. Okay, so in the end, she did find that the tomatoes that had the coffee grounds added were redder and they were more productive from counting the number of tomatoes. So, what could be, does anybody have any thoughts on what could be a criticism of her study and that somebody could say, well, that there's issues with that study because there's always things that you can improve upon, and this is why experiments have to be done over and over and over with different ways and for years and years before we really know something. Anything that she could have come up with where she could have said, I could do it again, but I could do this differently, or somebody could say, yeah, but what about this, or you didn't really control for this. Anybody have any ideas for me, Ruby?
She might have like put different amounts of water or like at different times, like the amount of water you put in it.
Well, I did not say that, but that was a very good point. She did water them evenly, but there's always room for mistakes, okay? It could have rained and some of the pots could have gotten more rainwater in them than others, okay, because they were outside. And also the light, you're talking about 24 pots, and so some pots could have gotten different amounts of light, so that could be an issue. You can't control for that perfectly. Anything else?
She might have could have had another group that was just plain soil to see how.
Well, she did.
I mean, just no Miracle Grow even.
No, she didn't put she didn't use Miracle Grow in that plane. But that actually, she could have just done one with the Miracle Grow too and kind of see how that compares. So she did have the control group. The control group did not have any Miracle Grow and did not have any coffee in it.
If the plants were outside, the bugs could have gotten onto some of the plants.
Yes. That could have happened too, yes. So her hypothesis was that coffee grounds were good for, she felt like she proved her hypothesis that the coffee grounds were good, but there's still room for improvement. It could still be repeated. It could be repeated with a larger sample size. So she only had 12 and 12 with her sample size. It could be repeated with 200, okay? So there's always room for improvement. All right, anybody have any questions about that? We good with that? Okay. So the hypothesis is that guess, a hypothesis that gets tested over and over and over again, becomes does anybody know what kind of the next level is going to be called?
A theory, right?
A theory, okay? And theories can still be disproven. And then what's even beyond or better than a theory?
A scientific law?
A scientific law, okay? Most of the laws that are, pretty much accepted as truth are not in biology. They're in physics and chemistry. Like the law of thermodynamics, you'll be studying a lot more laws in those classes. There's not a lot of laws that have kind of stood the test of time. There's not really laws in biology. All right, okay, so now we're gonna get on to our scientists, and you'll see that in the Quizlets, there is a Quizlet for the scientists, okay? So the scientists are definitely gonna be on the test. So be studying those scientists. And so the book starts out with kind of our oldest scientist, who is actually a Greek philosopher. You might have studied him in another class, Aristotle, and everybody thinks of Aristotle as being really smart, but he wasn't so smart about one thing. Okay? So what did Aristotle think? What did he propose? And he was kind of the first to propose it.
Spontaneous generation.
Yes, so he thought that life could just spontaneously generate because the maggots were on the dead, which the meat wasn't living, okay? So the maggots formed on the meat, and so he thought that life could spontaneously generate. So that was 350 BC, and that was the generally accepted belief even in the 1600s, that it could just spontaneously generate. Okay, so then we had in the 1600s, Jean-Baptiste Helmont came along and thought that he was also proving spontaneous generation, and designed this experiment. I think he thought that he was really smart, and this to me is so weird, but put a sweaty shirt in a box with some wheat. Did you guys not think this was kind of weird? With some wheat, left it for 21 days, and every time mice came out of the box, but did not. So he was determined the mice spontaneously generated from the sweaty shirt and from the wheat, but didn't think about, the mice could have gnawed through and gotten into the box. So that was him. And basically what you kind of need to know about him is that he failed to have a controlled experiment. His experiment wasn't controlled because there was a way for the mice to get in. Okay, so then we go on to Francisco Redi, and you all had a video about Francisco Redi, okay? So he was really questioning spontaneous generation. He did not think it was accurate. And so he put the meat in sealed jars. And at first they were completely sealed, and then people criticized him because they felt like, no, you have to have air, a living thing has to have air. And so then he did a mesh covered seal over the meat, and he didn't, in either one, there were no maggots, because maggots are fly larvae, and so he was protecting the meat from the flies landing on there, and so his experiment disproved spontaneous generation, but people still didn't believe that. It was still a very controversial thing. And then during that same time, in 1670, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, with a microscope that he designed, found the first microorganisms. So those are going to be living things that you can't see with your eyes, that you only can see under magnification. Now, when there's a lot of microbes or microorganisms grouped together, when they have reproduced, then a lot of times you can see them because there's so many. But individually, or in small amounts, you can only see them with your eyes. So that discovery was happening while there was this controversy about spontaneous generation. And so then Needham came along, and he didn't like what Francisco Redi. He did not agree with Francisco Redi. And so he did an experiment where he had a broth, which is just like a nutrient-rich material, in a glass flask, and he boiled the broth, sealed it with a cork, okay, and waited, and he had growth in the broth. So he assumed, no, spontaneous generation is true. It does happen because as the microorganisms reproduced, he could see them there. And how could they have gotten in when he boiled the broth? So he thought that he had killed anything that was already in there, and he sealed it with a cork. Okay, so he thought, no, you were wrong. Spontaneous generation is true. But what, does anybody remember any of the criticisms about his experiment, Nancy?
He didn't boil for long.
He didn't boil it for long enough. Ruby, you have anything else?
If that the microorganisms, if it wasn't like completely like shut maybe, so they could have gone into it.
Well, and so I think cork is a little controversial because it's not a complete seal. You know, there's something could have maybe gotten through cork. I think the big thing was boiling it long enough. But yes, so there were some criticisms of him, and so Spallanzani comes along, okay, and this is how science kind of works. Scientists study the former scientists, that's part of that research part, and they look at what they could have done differently. Like you might study my daughter's tomato experiment and think, okay, I'm going to do it differently because I think she should have done this, and you may learn something new. So Spallanzani came along and he criticized Needham because he said he did not boil long enough, okay? And so he boiled it longer, and he completely did some kind of like a heated seal over it and sealed it shut, and nothing grew. But he was criticized because they said he completely cut off the air, okay, and that you couldn't have a living thing without air. So he didn't. He thought, I finally disproved spontaneous generation, but people didn't like it. You know, they didn't agree. But who's our hero that finally comes along and finally proves that spontaneous generation is not true?
Louis Pasteur.
Right, okay. So I've always said it, Louis Pasteur. That's not how they said it on the video. But yes, the swan neck experiment on the test, very, very important. This is just a very important part of biology. Who can tell me how Louis Pasteur looked at Needham and looked at Spallanzani and designed a better experiment? What did he do to finally disprove spontaneous generation, Nancy?
He made something called like a swan flask,
Uh-huh.
where it's like the flask, but then the neck kind of was a curve. So then
Yes.
anything that was coming,
This is on page 14. Everybody on page, look at page 14.
anything that was trying to get through to the broth would get caught into the
Caught. So the air could get in the neck, okay, the air could get in, but the microbes would get trapped in that curve, okay? So he boiled it for long enough because he learned from Spallanzani and Needham. But he was also going to let air in so he wouldn't get criticized like Spallanzani. but he had a way to trap the microbes and nothing grew. And then to further prove, he then tilted it, turned it back so that the microbes then could get in the broth and they reproduced, and then he could see the microbes from the eye. So he was the one who finally, with that swan neck glass experiment, finally disproved spontaneous generation. So that really, just the history of spontaneous generation is so much how science works, okay? So different scientists learn from each other, from each other's mistakes, and finally find the truth. But I don't think that spontaneous, that's ever going to change with spontaneous generation. I think we got that one, but still, science is always changing, always changing. Okay, any other questions? All right, so next week, I'm not going to teach the whole time. It will probably be like 35 or 40 minutes of teaching, making sure that we're understanding everything, and then we will do, it's just a, one's kind of like a little bit of a group activity that you'll do at the table, and then we'll do a little microscope lab, so we'll have, I like it when we have labs and activities that you all have some time to talk to each other, just because I feel like high schoolers sometimes miss out on that, so I try to do that, so next week there'll be a little bit of that. And just make sure you have your closed-toed shoes, your lab notebook, and you're ready to go. And oh, did you all see my note about that mistake I made that I left those pages off in that one question? I'm really sorry, and if you didn't do that, I'm not that concerned about the on your own question with that, but just if you could go back and read that. And if you ever see anything like that that I do where that was a mistake on my part, where you think, I think she messed up here, I think she left something off, message me, because I do make mistakes, and I need you guys to keep me in line. So I hope you have a great week, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. I'm excited.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for class.